Blame is the name of the game for both parties today, but new polling shows Republicans would get more of the blame if the government shuts down. A Morning Consult survey shows 45% of voters say they'd blame Republicans compared to 33% for Democrats. Republican leaders' strategy? Argue that the ball is actually in the Democrats' court.
Whether or not the government shuts down at midnight is entirely up to two people. It's Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries.
Chuck Schumer needs a Schumer shutdown. And I think that's what we're probably careening toward. But it's up to the Democrats.
It would be foolish for Chuck Schumer and Democrats to shut this thing down.
Congressman Dusty Johnson is a Republican who represents South Dakota. It's good to see you again, Congressman. First of all, let me just get your take on where we are right now. Is there any chance the government doesn't shut down tonight?
We are in a real bad spot. Shutdowns are stupid. And it looks bad. I would say there's north of a 95% chance we shut down. In the House, we did pass out a bipartisan stopgap funding bill, just 6 weeks for us to be able to finish our work. But we simply cannot get Senate Democrats to go along with that clean pause in the shutdown.
Well, we just heard from the president. He was getting questions at the White House, and he was asked exactly this question. He says it is likely. How worried are you, though, not just based on the polls, but based on the fact that Democrats are at least in Washington and you guys aren't? How worried are you that Republicans will take the blame?
I know this is the lens we always look at shutdowns through. Which party is going to lose the shutdown? Let's be clear. Everybody loses a shutdown. The American people lose a shutdown. They're stupid. They don't make any sense. To me, we still have a lot of work to do on this appropriations bill. The only question before the Senate Democrats right now is, do we want to do those negotiations with the government open, or do we want to do those negotiations with the government closed? They are choosing closed. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I think the American people are going to look at that. And the longer this shutdown goes on, the more they're going to grow irritated that the Democrats want to negotiate with the government shut.
Are they, or Democrats say they're holding out because they want an extension of health care subsidies? Wouldn't subsidies, a deal on subsidies, be good for your constituents, too?
First off, we just can't. Part of the reason shutdowns are stupid is that the party that takes hostage the American economy and the American people to try to gain some massive policy concession always loses. It never works. Not when it's the Republicans doing it over the border wall in 2018, and certainly not today when it's the Democrats who are trying to do it on these COVID-era subsidies. What we know is that you're also not going to get a big policy concession like that on a 6-week funding deal. I mean, maybe you could get some extension of the health care subsidies for working class Americans as a part of the final budget deal, the final spending package. But the idea that they want to get a $1.5 trillion concession out of a 6-week stopgap is absolute insanity.
Well, one-man concession is another person's ability not to stay sick. Having said that, here's how Chuck Schumer puts it. So let me get your response to this. He says, look, you can't have an extension because later means never on those health care subsidies. Do you have to play the cards that you're dealt?
What Chuck is saying logically doesn't make any sense. You can't point to me one time in American history where one party was able to secure a major policy concession in a 6-week funding deal. This is not how the appropriations process has ever worked. And by the way, if Republicans...
Is the problem even that there is a 6-week funding deal is the problem? And I'm very curious what you hear from very sensible South Dakotans, which I hear from people all the time. Why can't Congress do its job? Why are we talking about a 6-week extension?
Oh, listen, I 100% agree with you. I think shutdowns are stupid. I would love to do a regular order, but unless you've got a time machine, and I don't, we have to deal with the situations as they exist now. And so the only question that Senate Democrats have to answer right now in the next 12 hours is, do we want to get the negotiations that everyone agrees need to happen with the government shut down, that's stupid, or with the government open for a little while longer. This is a very clear situation, and I get it. You can use statements by Chuck to try to make it more complicated than it is, but do we want to negotiate with the government shut, or do we want to negotiate with the government open?
Well, the argument, I guess, would be, and I'm not going to speak for them, is that in a Republican Washington, we got here in the first place because of the lack of negotiations. But there's another part of this, and that is how we go about it.
That's provably false. What is
provably false? That you got there because in a world where Donald Trump is in the White House, Republicans control the House and Republicans control the Senate.
The facts just don't agree with that framing. Here's what we know. We know that appropriations bills passed out of the Senate Appropriations Committee on a bipartisan basis. And we know that we also had a House stopgap that passed out just last week on a bipartisan basis. Appropriators, Democrats or Republicans alike, have been working together to get to yes. The idea that because they didn't get everything done, we're going to shut the whole damn thing down and pout is Democratic framing. It doesn't make any sense. Shutdowns are stupid.
You're framing this as Democratic pouting, but the administration has threatened to fire rather than furlough federal workers. What do you have? Something shy of 9,000 federal jobs in your state, so some of those jobs could potentially be yours. Is that any way to run a rodeo?
Well, I understand that when we get to the brink of a shutdown, there are always going to be conversations about what pain will a shutdown impose.
Is that a conversation or a threat? Because for the history of shutdowns, right, people have been furloughed. That's for sure. Some people haven't gotten paychecks. That's for sure. What the administration is saying, we might fire people.
We know that during the shutdown under President Obama, he also made some threats. Listen, people are trying to get the necessary leverage to get to a deal. And so I get it. You're not happy. I'm not happy that we are on the brink of a shutdown that may indeed have some, will absolutely have some negative repercussions for Americans, as every shutdown ever in the history of our government has had. Shutdowns are stupid. That's why Senator Ron Johnson and I have a bill that would end this nonsense forever by eliminating shutdowns. That's what we should be taking care of, rather than worrying about whether something is a threat or just a commitment.
Representative Dusty Johnson, you're good to come on the program and have the conversation. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks much for having me.